Guys, I'm excited about this because this is something that when we started talking about it, I think as animal lovers, a lot of times when we hear that there's restrictions with rentals when it comes to pets, we think that it's because people just don't want to deal with the hassle. And I think there's a lot more behind it than simply, I'm trying to be grumpy Ebenezer Scrooge landlord, right? And so that's why I wanted to bring the three of you, because from talking with each of you, you all have different skill sets, but you also have different roles within the rental business. And I wanted people to understand why those rules are in place from people who would rather the rules weren't in place. Right? I think we all wish we could do that, and we all would if we could, right? So I think this is going to be a good discussion to just get into the rules and regulations, and more importantly, the why, so that the agents can go back and explain to renters why these rules are in place, why it might be better to buy than rent at that time, and then also just dig into maybe looking at what we can do to make it easier for landlords to allow pets too, because I think that's a hard thing. A lot of landlords are just scared to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
People have had a bad experience.
Yeah. You have a bad experience, or you've been told a lot of bad experiences, right? Or you've had male cat pee in your house once. Right. It doesn't take more than once with male cat pee, right? So let's do this. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and where you're at, and we'll kind of go from there. Meg, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Beck Potches. I am broker owner of a property management business. It's called Map Property Solutions. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm in Winchester, Virginia, but I also cover Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia.
Jamie?
I am Jamie D. Simone with the Homes for All team and Keller Williams Capital Properties in Northern Virginia. I cover Northern Virginia and DC. I don't go as far as Winchester, so I send all that business over to Meg.
And Jamie's a landlord. You have a short-term and a long-term rental, right?
I have a short-term. Personally, I have a short-term rental and a long-term rental. I also work with a lot of landlords, so I probably have about a dozen landlords in my regular stable of people. So I'm constantly helping them find tenants, after the leases go up or expired. So I really get, I hear them a lot, I also work with a lot of tenants. I built my business working with tenants. So one of my biggest success stories was helping a gentleman who had a 120-pound dog find a rental property. And when you're in Northern Virginia in an area where we get multiple applications for every property, that is not an easy feat. So.
Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Cash with Keller Williams in Illinois, just west of Chicago. So I cover the western suburbs of Chicago. And I am a short-term rental owner, on the Airbnb and Vrbo platforms. My rental is in Michigan.
Awesome, guys. I appreciate it. The one thing, so I'm just going to start with this because there was one thing when Chris and I were talking a little while ago. We're talking about short-term rentals, and because your property in Michigan is a big property, it has a huge yard, and you had mentioned to me that you guys didn't really allow pets. And there was something that you said to me that kind of hit me. You told me you were as worried about the neighbors' dogs as the visitors' dogs.
But yeah, that was just one reason. But yeah.
I never thought about the fact that bringing a different dog into the neighborhood every week
is just going to rile up my neighbor's dog.
Yeah, I mean, and not only do you run a risk of your renter's dog doing something, you run a risk of the neighbor's dog doing something to the renter, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have an awesome relationship with my neighbor there, which is really hard to do when you have a short-term rental, and because a lot of the neighborhoods frown upon them, so you want to have the most pleasant experience for not just your guests, but your neighbors. So, because they could make or break you. And they have a dog. And because it's, a little bit more rural, there's other dogs on the street too that people kind of just let roam loose. It's kind of the way it goes in the country sometimes. There's also a lot of loose barn cats that come in and out of the yard. I see them on my security cameras. And so, bringing typically a city dog into the mix, because most of our guests are from the Chicago area. The majority of guests that come are from Chicago. They don't often understand the ways of country life, so that was just one of the reasons. You bring a dog in, the neighbor's dog, obviously can hear, smell them, see them, and that riles them up, especially like you said, if they're seeing a different one all the time, and it causes barking back and forth. Yeah, my neighbor probably wouldn't be real happy with me.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
Yeah, but do you want me to get into the other reasons why we decided?
Well, I think let's do this. This was my first thought, was I would walk through each of you and ask you kind of what the rules that you have in place are. And I know, Meg, it's going to be a little bit different for you, but you probably have fairly consistent rules that you recommend, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I talk to a client initially, I kind of throw out the stat that at least 50% of the people looking probably have a pet of some sort. Tenants have pets. Then we have the discussion of what type of pet might you take? You got to keep in mind that I deal with a lot of military people who might want to come back to that house. I do have some clients whose kids are deathly allergic to dogs. We're not being mean. We can't have a dog in the house, for them to come back to. So there are some obviously circumstances that we just can't work around. But usually I recommend to my clients that we take a pet deposit that is refundable. I don't like non-refundable deposits because, you're sitting there and if your dog makes a mess on the carpet in the back of your head, you're like, well, I've already lost that money. So, forget it. You might not be as keen to fix it. Whereas, if that you've got $500 on the line or whatever it is, you might actually want to leave the house in good shape.
That's a good point.
Good point.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we do. Same with pet rent. I don't really charge that for the same reason. I would rather just have a bigger deposit than charging them any other kind of fees that they're just losing that money in their mind every month.
Do you do weight limit or anything like that ever, or?
Not unless it's like a condo and they have some kind of rule or insurance has some kind of restriction, but otherwise, no.
Gotcha. And you don't do breed or anything like that, or try to avoid it unless it's a.
Same thing. Yeah. Unless insurance has some issue, which it depends on what insurance the landlord has. But if they don't, then we don't.
Well, I will say one thing I noticed, at least here locally in the St. Louis area, the cities that do have restrictions are much more apt to go to a renter than they are to an owner and have them remove an animal. It's just what it seems like. But what about you, Jamie? What about on the long term that you own? What do you?
Long-term rental, I allow pets. It is a condo, so there is a restriction as to size and amount. So we're allowed to have 2 cats, or you actually can have 2 pets, 2 cats or 2 dogs, but the dogs can't exceed, I think, 35 pounds. And
Combined or individually?
That's pretty small.
Individually. And yeah, right. And a rule of thumb that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to pet size restrictions or type restrictions, it has to do with the building has an elevator. So a lot of times when I'm working with tenants who are looking for a rental property, if they have a dog that is over a certain size, if I go to garden style condos, I mean, because we have a lot where I am, there's a lot of condos, right? So it's not as big of an issue in more rural areas, but there's a lot of condos in this area. And if we look at garden style condos that have up to 4 floors, they usually don't have elevators. It's the elevators because it's a cultural issue with certain, there are certain religions in this area that don't want to be, can't touch a dog. They literally, it's like against their religion to touch a dog. These are things you learn working. It's like crazy what you learn. But they can't touch a dog. So to have people be forced in an elevator with dogs. So basically the thought is that you can pick your dog up.
Okay.
So that's typically, and until you start thinking about it that way, it makes it a whole lot easier to help people adjust what kind of homes they have to look for. They can't go live in a high rise if they have a, 75-pound dog. Most of them aren't going to allow big dogs there. But at any rate, so the condo, yes, we accept 2 cats, 2 dogs, not to exceed the condo allotment because it's 6 stories. And my beach property, however, we do not, the short-term rental, we do not accept pets. It's also technically a condo owned property. There's only 8 units there. 6 of them have people who are there almost full time. And the condo rule actually says short-term rentals cannot have pets. And it's really for the same reason. We have a pool that we share. People, I want everybody and their brother to accept pets, but it's too hard to deal with a turnover issue. We do weekly rentals and our turnover window is too small to have to deal with like a pet issue that happened after somebody stayed and didn't take care of something. There's just not enough time in the turnover window to allow it, even if it was allowed in the condo. If I had a space that had more turnover time, like it was really just weekend rentals, but we do 7-day week. I mean, it's Friday to Friday rentals. So there's just no turnover time.
That's something I don't think most people think about is I guess, I mean, and it doesn't even have to be that the dog did anything. I have a house that we just sold.
Extra,
here.
whatever.
Well, they had Danes. They had been out of the house. They brought their Danes over for 2 days, and you can smell the Danes.
Oh.
You can smell the dander. That's really interesting. That's something I didn't think about, the turnover, and what that creates.
And I also think that and Christina can probably speak to this more, but I mean, there's a lot of places who I have a philosophy about taking your animal on vacation. And I have a dog, as you can see here, that goes everywhere with us when we can take him. I mean, we take them to restaurant, we take them sit outside, we take them all sorts of places. When you're on vacation, a lot of times you're not at the house. And unless you have your pet with you, you're leaving your pet unattended in a strange home. And
yeah, that's a major reason why we didn't.
Yeah, and first and foremost, people that take their cat, I have multiple cats. People who take their cats on vacation with them are crazy. Like the last thing I want to do is shove a litter box in my car and take all the cat accoutrements with me on vacation. No, you get a house sitter to come and take care of your cats. But people who are on vacation, they're vacationing. They're not necessarily high alert cleanup mode. They're not keeping a close eye on things as they probably should be. And they go out to dinner at night, or they're doing things that the animal can't be with them, and they're in a strange home, and a lot of people don't kennel them. And I'm not even saying that they all should be kenneled, but we don't know the behaviors. They get up on couches, they chew things, whatever. So that's really, it's when you really start digging down into it, you're like, there's a lot of reasons why it's very hard to do it in short-term rentals.
And there's a drastic difference in the way different people care for their animals. And I mean, that's the reality. My dogs get a bath every week. Not everybody's dogs smell like my dogs do.
Right. Well, that was another thing. And just like Jamie said, people will leave that dog inside the house, or I thought, God forbid, if they should chain that dog up outside and leave it in my yard chained up all day while they're at the beach, then I'd really be angry. But people might argue and say, well, my dog is so well behaved, or she's old and she sleeps all day. Dogs act differently when they're at a different environment. So dogs will act out sometimes just because they're out of their own routine, they're out of their own environment, and they panic. So you can't take somebody's word of, well, he never does anything at home, because they're not going to be at their home. They're at a strange place. And, yeah, if somebody had left the dog all day while they're at the beach all day, or, tied it up outside all day, I'd really be upset. But yeah, we did have to keep in mind too, about what Jamie also said about, we can't deep clean every turnover, so the next person checking in might be highly allergic. And now we've just, created dog hair all over the place. So it's too hard to do that kind of deep cleaning that would need to be done. Oh, and I did hear from a friend of mine who does have a property there that allows dogs. She's had several guests that their dogs have been skunked at night. So there's, they're skunked at nighttime. Everybody's sitting outside around, around the fire, and the dog gets skunked. Well, then guess what? They're letting that dog in your house after it's been skunked
to clean it. Oh yeah. Oh.
So I was just like, nope, I can't risk that as much, as I'd love to. I just can't do that. So those were, the major reasons why we decided not to. Now, maybe if I had more of a cabin-y style house that's waterfront, so I know people are, mostly staying in the yard because the water's right there, then maybe I wouldn't mind as much. But where my
you're
house
gonna have
is,
wet dogs in your house.
yeah, but I mean, there are people that's pretty much, the cabin's going to have that musty smell anyway, being lakeside. Yeah.
Good point. I think
I see what human beings do when they're not in their own home, let alone what human beings, pets do when they're not in their home. Like,
Right.
sometimes I look at people and I'm like, because it's our vacation home, right? So we go there and we'll have friends come with us, and I'll turn around and see them doing, like, they'll have their shoes up on the sofa, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why are your shoes on my sofa? And it's like, they know it's our house, but it's a vacation home, so they don't think of it as our house. They wouldn't do that at my house here. So
right.
I'm like, so you can only imagine what they're doing with their,
Yeah, people do strange things at vacation properties.
The one thing I'll add to the size restrictions and things like that is, when we're looking at adopting out a dog through rescue, right? I wouldn't take, for instance, I have a husky mix. I wouldn't take her and put her into an apartment. She'd go crazy.
Yeah.
She needs to be out 10 times a day running the yard, or she'd go nuts.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I want to pause you there for a second. I've had this conversation with my landlords a lot, that it's not the size of the animal, it's the breed. Because I've had pushback on larger animals, and I'm like, yes, it's an 85-pound bulldog, but I can assure you that they sleep all day long. Like, they don't move. This dog, probably getting them to move from the bed to the kitchen is like a big trip for them. So, I mean, depending on the breed style, Jack Russells, small dogs, they're horribly destructive.
Yes.
I had one.
They're diggers,
Really?
they're scratchers, they are super high energy, they're constantly running around. So, I actually, and I don't breed discriminate in that sense, but I do talk to my clients. I'm like, look, if we're comparing like somebody who's got their 85-pound bulldog with somebody with their 15-pound Jack Russell, I'll tell you to go with the 85-pound bulldog every day.
Bulldog's not going to tear up your blinds. The Jack Russell will tear up your blinds. I promise you. Doesn't matter if they're the 3-inch wide blinds. He's still going to tear them up.
Racetracks through your.
Exactly. Little dogs are high energy.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I still believe that kids do more damage than dogs do. But
Well,
that's coming from a person without kids.
I don't disagree with you, Christina.
The problem is you can't restrict kids. You can't.
Well,
Well, I can tell you, I have a 19-year-old and my dog, and yeah, I'd rather have a house full of dogs some days.
Well, we were talking about dogs acting different in different environments. And just to kind of put that into perspective a little bit, I have a a big 120-pound dog. If we take the other dogs to the vet because they go the same day, my big dog dumps all of his food bowls. And it's just because he's nervous and he doesn't like being alone. And so he just goes in, and they're watered. They're like 30-pound bowls, and he still grabs them, flips them all over. He doesn't flip the water, just the food bowls. But if your dog was doing that over and over in your rental house because he's stressed, he doesn't know where he's at.
Well, my neighbor next door, she travels for work, but she like may do a day trip or like 2-day trip in a row. And her cat will go to the bathroom in her office. She's like, she's never done that before, but she gets so mad that she leaves. And I'm going over to the house. Like, I've never seen the cat in person ever. But I go over, make sure she has food and water and like clean out the litter box. But she's like, every time I go away, she goes and poops on my office floor.
Yeah, see, all animals do something different when they're in a different environment or routine.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's something.
She goes, she's mad at me because I'm traveling. And she's letting me know she's mad at me.
Now, I did get a request this year for a guest for the 4th of July that wanted to bring a service animal. So obviously I'm going to allow a service animal, but I was even nervous about that. But I kind of found a way around it, which I'm glad that I did this. This service animal was small. It was to detect for seizures. That's why she had it. And I got to thinking, and I'm like, oh, they probably also are not aware that in the country, you're going to have, like my neighbor across the way has full on blowout fireworks all 4 days, super loud, and I thought I better warn her, because what if this freaks out this little dog, right?
Right.
So I warned her about that, and she was so thankful. She was like, oh yeah, no, I better, find someplace else. I go, yeah, you're better off in town where they don't allow that kind of thing, where it's going to be a quieter time for the 4th of July. So I'm just waiting on, another time when I'm going to get that request, because I probably am. We don't have to allow emotional support animals, but we do have to allow the service animals.
So one of the things that I have responded, because I have had requests, and it was a request, and all I did was answer it true, honestly, and the request went away, like they never booked. And I was like, service animals are permitted as long as you have that animal with you at all times.
Right.
Because if it is actually performing a service, you will have it with you at all times.
At all times. Yeah.
It is not allowed to be left at the home unattended. And it's amazing how all of a sudden that wasn't going to work out. And I'm like, well, then how much of a service animal actually is it? If in fact that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I still don't understand the rule that we can't ask them for the certificate.
So
Why can't we ask
You're
them?
allowed to ask what service it performs.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
why can't we just ask for the certificate for proof?
Well, because there is an essential certificate, that's why. And so people just make them up. What you're allowed to ask is what's the service they perform, right? And it has to be a service they're trained to perform. It can't just be, well, my dog keeps me calm, so I keep them next to me. That's not a service. A dog that detects diabetes is a big one. Like you said, seizures, because I think they can tell blood pressure, if I remember correctly, is what they can tell. There's dogs that detect cancer. There's dogs that do all sorts of different things. And having been in that realm when I was a young kid with support dogs, I get why, from an ADA standpoint, you don't want to say, oh, show me your certificate and what's wrong with you, right? That's a little bit overboard. But you're right. The animal should be with you at all times, because they're an animal that you need to go about your daily business. And the ESA thing is going to mess up a lot of people that really need it. And that's what's really sad. There's going to be a lot of people and a lot of places that start questioning that never would have 10 years ago.
Right.
And as much as I support pets, I do have a very hard time with people who have used that system.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So
And
I deal with
yeah.
something that you guys probably don't deal with.
What's that?
Here in Florida is we have a lot of people from other countries that invest here. And because of cultural differences, they don't like to have pets in their house. Like
Right.
their pets they're not house dogs. They roam outside. So when you talk to them about like wanting to have pets, they're not okay with it because that's not what their culture dictates. Like in Trinidad, the dogs are outside. So I have a couple clients that have houses here and I'm like, what about pets? And they're like, what do you mean? Like our pets don't come in the house. I
Yeah.
met a gentleman the other day from Jamaica. He was a contractor here and I was showing him pictures of my dog and he said, is that your dog on the sofa? And I said, yeah. He goes, our dogs are not allowed on the furniture.
Yeah.
So we deal with that when it comes to like allowing pets here. And then of course our HOA restrictions are crazy ridiculous.
Yeah. I know for Florida, the HOA stuff is,
Horrendous.
yeah, I think, and I think there's probably an opportunity there for somebody with money to take advantage of that void, of that lack of housing for those people. But I mean, we have it. I mean, we're in the middle of the country and we have the same thing. A lot of it here is under 50 pounds. And I don't know why it's under 50.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
We
know
have a
why
lot
that's
of
the
under
break
50
mark.
pounds.
It's under
because
50 for HOAs or for condo associations?
it's just for what landlords do.
Oh, for landlord.
Even
Okay,
in
sorry.
private, even in single family homes, they
Yeah.
tend to stick to that number.
But here,
I
like
don't
what
know-
you, sorry, Joe.
No, I don't know that I don't know where that there, to me, it seems like an arbitrary number. It doesn't seem like it came from anywhere.
Well, I
I mean,
mean, the
He's
town,
57 pounds and you see what this is how he lives his life. So I hear you with the 50 pound. I'm like,
Jamie,
Yeah,
I
my
have to s-
70-pound hog. I was saying
I
my
have to send-
70-pound hound sleeps 20 hours a day. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. I have to send you a picture of mine, Jamie. Like he stole, one of my neighbors made some beds for the rescue. So I put them in the corner in the IKEA bag and I turn around, I'm working and he pulls one out, flops it down and lays on it. Now he's too big to get on it properly. So he's got to roll up like your dog just to be able to lay on it. And I'm like, this is not yours. And then I turn around, he pulls the next one out. I'm like, no, you can have one. That's it. These are not yours. These are for the rescue. So I call my neighbor. I'm like, so the dog took one of your beds. She's like, that's fine. I'll make some more. I'm like, Lord. But our biggest obstacle here definitely is the HOAs because it doesn't matter. They have cutoffs, breed restrictions, huge here on everything, size again. And
Well,
then the
Well,
landlords.
how do you, and Meg, you know, being really, handling pride, how do you handle when somebody says, well, it's an emotional support animal?
I'm sure every state probably has their own thing that we're supposed to follow. I've heard mixed things in Virginia too, which is difficult. I've heard we can ask for a letter or a prescription, but it has to be from a doctor in state. That way the theory is you're cutting down on somebody, going on Amazon and buying a $20 fake letter. There's also pet screening websites. You can have people put their information in if they have an ESA, and that does the screening for you for like a small fee. It's like $30 or something. And that helps take some of the liability off of you too. That way they're saying, oh, this is not legit. It's not me saying it's not legit. That's kind of, right now, it seems like a really gray area and the laws haven't caught up yet.
Yeah.
Because obviously if it's a legitimate support animal, we're not going to deny it. But
Right.
if you want on
Right.
Amazon and your untrained dog,
Well,
has
it's
this
still
fake
like,
certificate.
the woman who tried to take the peacock on the plane as an emotional support animal ruined it for a lot of people.
Oh my gosh, did you see the lady
Wasn't
today?
there a mini horse at one time that somebody was trying
Yeah,
to-
a mini horse.
Yeah.
Did you see today there was a lady in, I believe it was Pennsylvania, who tried to board a plane with her dog in a stroller and they wouldn't let her. And then she tried to say, I guess it was an emotional support animal or a service animal. And because she didn't have the proper carrier, they wouldn't let her on the plane. And she went and dumped the dog in the parking lot in the stroller with food and water and went on the plane to the resort and abandoned her dog in the airport parking lot.
He was like 8 years old too, so not
Yeah.
like a just got him dog. I saw that last night on the news. That was crazy.
In
I know.
Florida,
We'll have to find that.
No, I
We need
think
to do a
it's
video on
Pennsylvania
that.
airport.
Yeah, she
She's going
said.
to Mexico or something.
hmm.
Oh my God.
It's- Um,
So see, people are nuts. We're gonna let them in our rentals.
No, but as far as the question about emotional support, I haven't really had to deal with that yet, though I do monitor social media. So anytime someone says, oh, I can't find a property that'll accept my dog, everyone chimes in and goes, just say it's an ESA dog. Don't worry, they can't refuse you. So like, that's the word on the street is like, oh, if you have a big dog, just tell them
Right.
that.
A lot
And
of
I'm sure there's some
HOAs
people
now
who-
have a special part of their application if it's an ESA and they ask for more in-depth information, like you have to get it signed by your doctor. And not all of them, but a lot of them really like dug deep into that to make sure that people aren't just getting those letters.
Yeah.
That's
I
interesting.
think every animal is an emotional support animal.
Yeah.
well, it really is. I mean,
They
that's why
are.
we have animals. We don't just
Right.
have them to look cute.
Uh-huh.
That too.
So but I do want to, I know you wanted us to also talk about like reasons why we should, like for our landlords, long-term rentals, I definitely think should accept pets. But it's interesting because I dove deep into this because I did a couple of videos. I don't know if you guys saw the videos I did about 4 reasons why landlords should accept pets and 3 ways tenants can get their pets accepted. But when I did a deep dive into kind of statistics, because I'm a numbers geek and I like to be able to back anything I say with actual data as opposed to I think it's a great idea or anecdotal information. Of course, everybody I know has pets because I'm a pet person, right? But interestingly, and this is HSUS and Forbes magazine they estimate that 66% of US households have pets. And of those, a lot of them are multiple pet households. So it's something like 85% of those are multiple pet households. I didn't write that down. But out of those, 33% are millennials. And as we know, millennials are our largest population right now. They're our largest group, and they're our largest group of first-time home buyers. That's kind of ancillary to being renters. But they make up 45% of the rental market. So when you're talking to your land, when I talk to my landlords, I say a couple of things I do to encourage them to accept pets is one, we know that there's just a lot of people with pets, right? Now, keep in mind what I say, I'm talking about an area, the Northern Virginia, DC market, we're an expensive area. Overall, it's a pricey area to live. I'm not working in rental properties that are $600 a month. Our rental properties are pricey. These people have good jobs. They wouldn't qualify to even rent the property if they didn't have a good job. So they're making good income. We find that a majority of those people, this is kind of interesting, $136 billion a year Americans spend on their pets. And if you take that and you apply that they've done studies and they find that people with higher incomes have more pets. Pet owners have higher incomes. Sorry, it's not the other way. So typically pet owners have higher incomes. They also tend to take better care of where they live, like in general, because they have, and again, I'm not saying that every person with a pet has a high income, and I'm not saying every person with a pet takes good care of things, but
Right.
at least in this area, you find that you start talking to people are like, oh, I take my dog to doggy daycare every day. I mean, and so I go back to the landlord and I'm like, this person has their dog in daycare, or they have a pet walker that comes twice a day. Like, I just find that people in this area, they don't just like leave in the morning and like show up sometime 12 hours later and hope that their pet's still there. They really have a lot of, and the millennials are treating pets like their children. So not only are they, a lot of millennials have pets, but because they haven't necessarily gotten married yet, or maybe they are getting married, but they haven't had kids yet, those pets are their children. And the care and feeding that they give to these animals is far exceeds how some people take care of their own children, frankly.
You're right. That's why the fresh food industry is going crazy right now. I mean, I priced it out and I was like, I can't afford that.
No, and then the best part for landlords, and the thing that they forget, is it is still difficult for people with pets to find homes.
Right.
And if you're a renter with pets, it's a challenge. So what does that mean? They tend to stay there longer. They'll renew the lease over and over again until they're ready to buy something, because they don't want to keep going through the agony. So you end up with really long-term renters. Personal case, my long-term rental, we've had the same tenants for going on 8 years. They have 2 cats. They're like, and when they moved in, they had 2 cats. Those 2 cats since passed away. They adopted kittens. And I get pictures. I mean, like, they keep me in the loop of all that stuff.
Right. That's just how I got a client with 3 cats, Elise. Was I talked to the landlord and said, if she signs a 2-year lease, will you let her have the 3 cats? They're, a bonded trio. They can't be separated. And that landlord understood and let her do it if she signed the 2-year lease.
So that was one of the kind of my next questions was, what can we do to help landlords make exceptions in those cases, right? Like, it sounds like a longer lease is certainly more valuable to that landlord, right? Because the odds are, whether you have cats or not, you're probably replacing the carpet. You're probably, you know what I mean? Like, certain things are going to be done every time you flip tenants, no matter what, right? I think, what can we do with our tenants to help them find rentals when normally that wouldn't be the case? I know with like with homeowners insurance, we've talked about this. Several of the homeowners insurance allow you to have what normally would be a restricted breed, provided they have the AKC Canine Good Citizenship training, right? So they will drop whatever extra fees, or they allow you to have what normally would be restricted pets. Has anybody seen anything like that? Or is that something that would be valuable for us to help put together for landlords, where it's like, hey, here's some things, we understand why you have these rules. Here's some ways that you could accept maybe what you normally wouldn't, by knowing that you're not putting yourself in danger. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know that that's a challenge that we have here. That is not, I never hear, I don't get, that's not the response I get from landlords. That is the least of their concern. The breed type, as far as being aggressive or not, like, that is not something, and we honestly don't have a ton of people that are renters that have big dogs. They just tend to have smaller dogs, or else they have like the big bulldogs and the big.
Or would they have bigger dogs, but they can't? What about
Well, yeah,
that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, well, yeah, totally. I mean, but when you're young and you're moving around a lot, you do have to kind of, you tend to streamline as much as you can, because you just don't know where tomorrow is going to take you.
That's how I ended up with the Jack Russell, because small dog would be smart now, right?
Pocket dog.
I mean, here it's still going to be our biggest challenge is not even sometimes the landlord. I mean, you guys have seen on the news, our insurance issues here is crazy. It's hard to find an insurance company that does not have breed restriction, like the landlord may have, an insurance company that doesn't allow the breeds. And then on top of that, now we've got the HOA that may not allow the breeds. And I haven't seen, we only had an issue in Miami, which was not allowing pit bull breeds. And that's been overturned as of October 1st. But it's more, the HOA is our biggest challenge. Even for me, where I was just moved from, they found out I got Jax during COVID. So it was like undercover brother. Nobody will know. Like everybody's locked up in their house. And somebody turned me in and they gave me 15 days to get rid of him. And I had 1 month until closing.
Wow.
And I had to figure out a creative way to work around it because I was not getting rid of my dog when I was just about to move into my own house that had no breed restriction.
Yeah, I'm thinking I wonder if there's a way for us to kind of put together, here's some things that you could use for a landlord to say, okay, this makes sense for me to take this risk because the risk isn't as, whether it's big dogs or like, I think the AKC Canine Good Citizen, I think that testing can be done with any dog, big or small, right? Like, honestly, I would rather have most big dogs than a Shih Tzu because the Shih Tzu is going to pee in your house. It's going to.
Well,
You know,
little
Yeah, big dog's just gonna stick its head through your blinds when it wants to see the people
Yeah.
outside.
A Shih Tzu is going to pee in your house. I'm
No.
sorry if you have a Shih Tzu. It's the truth.
So it's interesting. So, but let's talk about like, what are the pushbacks that you hear from landlords? Because what I hear is obviously with cats, yeah, cat pee. What I hear a lot isn't so much destruction from dogs, like pee or anything like that, but it's scratching at
Yeah.
the doors, tearing up the doors and windows.
Barking.
And oddly enough, I get a lot of the destruction of if it's a single family home, destruction of the yard with dog pee. So I've introduced my tenants and my landlords to the urine stuff that you can get that you spray in the grass that helps break down and I'm like, just require that they use this every couple of months. Like, you can work around things if that's what you're worried about.
Or even require that they use I don't know if you guys have UCCO. We have UCCO here, and it's like the people who come by and clean up after your dog.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
we have
even
bugs.
that, even requiring the tenant to handle that, I think would be huge for a lot of landlords,
Mhm.
right?
Barking is one. Like when the dog barks a lot because of separation anxiety of being a disruption.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
especially
can
in
definitely see that.
condo townhouses. Yeah.
Yeah, condos and townhouses, that's a big thing. Yeah, it is the scratching or the chewing, like if they have a puppy and they don't properly crate train it and it eats the baseboards or anything else that's wood in the house.
And I just think the way the rental market, at least here, has been, Jamie's is probably similar. You know, they put up a house, townhouse, condo for rent here, and they get 27 applicants the first day. So they don't have to. That's not that they're anything against dogs or cats. They just don't have to. They
Yeah.
have plenty of applicants that don't have pets they can choose from.
And
Yeah.
that's
So until that market changes, I don't think we're gonna see the attitudes change.
So Jamie, I have a
One-
question
Okay.
for you. A lot of the fear people have with regard to cats in rentals is that if there was a previous animal on the property, they feel like the cat's going to start spraying the house to mark its territory. So here, I have a lot more pushback with landlords wanting cats in their property.
Mhm. I
yeah.
would say that's true here as well.
Yeah.
Cat urine is just so hard to get out of. It's so hard to get the smell out of anything, and I think that's a big one. You know, I think cats can be a little bit more destructive to things like carpet, where they're clawing at rooms and things like that. I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Carpet
And where do
seams.
you put a litter box in an apartment? Like, where do you put your litter box in your apartment? Most people put it in the spare bedroom on the carpet.
So let me tell you, I have a requirement on my rental because it is carpeted. It's a 2-bedroom condo. It's on the top floor. The condo requires carpeting, so it's got carpet. I have a requirement written into my lease that they must have, and I forget how it's worded exactly, but they must have a plastic barrier under the litter box that expands out like a foot around the litter box. Like I specify that only because some people just don't know what they don't know. You know, you kind of, having gone through every bad cat behavior on the planet, you can have great behaving cats and not know that someday they're going to do this wacky thing because you've never experienced it before. But since I have, I know what to expect. So that's kind of ways I've gotten around it. The other way is, it depends how much your rentals are, but you know, we have a 1 month security deposit here is the standard requirement, as well as we do the $500 refundable pet deposit. So if somebody's renting a $3,000 house and we have a $500 additional deposit on top of that, the landlord already has a $3,500 deposit to cover damages. I mean, your pet has got to be trying pretty hard to do that much. You can replace carpet for $3,500. You can replace a front door for 30. I mean, you know, like, you can fix a lot with that amount of money. And sometimes just being able to talk to the landlord and be like, look, this is going to, just the standard deposit that you're already going to be holding for damages is enough to cover a lot of what might happen. And it goes back. And then the other thing I do is I tell my landlords, and this is our standard Virginia lease, is that, you know, you have the right to inspect your property. A lot of landlords don't. And that's, you know, that's on them. But you know, you want to go by every 6 months and inspect it, then go ahead, or at least do it for the first year that you have somebody there, if it's a tenant that renews. So you get an idea of how they're taking care of the place, because you can nip something in the bud early. But if you wait 5 years after they've lived there to move out and find out that all this stuff has happened,
That the cat's been peeing on the floor and now it's in your subfloor and it smells in your walls. And
I mean, that's a different issue. But if you go there 6 months later and the place reeks of cat pee, then you need to like deal with it then. You're going to know that something's going on.
So I have a question for, well, really for Jamie and Meg, but when we were discussing this probably 7 months ago, there was an agent in California who mentioned to me that they had an insurance company out there that was, the best way to explain, they were doing pet renters insurance. So in essence, you paid as part of your renter's insurance and it covered any damages your pet then did to the property, which I thought from a landlord standpoint seems like it's a way better option for me than having a $500 deposit. Right? Am I right there, or am I missing?
I didn't know there was such a thing. That's
I didn't either. Well, and I don't know that I would do either or. I would probably do both.
Both.
Yeah.
Because if it's a rider on, we already require renter's insurance. And if it's just a rider on the renter's insurance, I can't imagine it's a whole lot. Renter's insurance
Can't be much.
It's probably $50.
Right. I think it was something like that, like $57 a month added on, or 40 cents, something like that. But I thought that was really interesting because first off, how many landlords would be, how many more would be open to taking an animal if they knew that that was there, that they had this? Because having a $500 deposit is great until the repairs are $1,500, right?
Well, keep in mind, you still have the deposit from the regular.
Right.
I mean, that goes to cover damages as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just thinking, who knows? If you have 3,500, it could be. I guess the guarantee that it's covered, regardless of dollar amount, maybe. I mean, am I on the right track there, or am I
But
not?
I could see a negative to that, Joe, is like them saying, well, I should get most of my security deposit back because you're going to get money from the insurance company, and not knowing what you're going to get from the insurance company. Because like here we have to give, like, I don't know what it's like everywhere else, 15 days, we have to give them notice if we're keeping anything out of the security deposit. So it's a real scramble after we get somebody out to get in, do the inspection, find out the quotes, figure out what we're going to do to get it turned over. Because if we don't notify them within 15 days, then by the end of 30 days, the security deposit has to be returned.
I wonder if in that case, though, they have to do it before they move out or something. That's a good point. That's something that I think we should look into, because like you would really want them to do it a week before or a month before they moved out or something like that. You would need that because you'd have an insurance adjuster, I'm guessing. It would be like anything else. So you'd have an adjuster come by and say, yes, that's pet damage. No, that's not. Right.
Oh, you'd be surprised, like, I don't know what it's like for anybody else, but here it's constant, like, no, that was wear and tear, and that was wear, and like, you're looking at the house, like you said, the people just treat other people's houses so horribly. And
I
they're
always
just-
tell people renters, whether they're renting a $800 a month house or a $8,000 a month house,
Correct.
renters are renters are renters.
Mhm.
And I always go back to my sister. My sister lived in Colorado and she rented a probably 3,800 square foot house for 7 years. My sister's a pretty clean person. That house was not clean because you don't take care of things the way they're yours. You don't, and it's not a flaw in the person. It's just the way it is.
Well, and especially if somebody has never owned a property before, it's different if somebody has owned their own home before and they're renting.
Mhm.
When they've not owned their own home before and they're dealing with the ramifications of their own miscare of a home, then all of a sudden they realize how, wow, this is
Yeah, and it's
not an
funny
easy fix.
that you say that because sometimes you'll do a credit check and all the things that need to be done, and everything is like crystal perfect tenant on paper. And then you put them in, and then their character and the way they take care of the house isn't the same. So the landlords get mad. I go, wait a minute, I can't judge the character of a person by what I see from what they've reported and what we've, done.
I had a landlord.
I don't know
ask
what you
me-
want me to tell you. Like, I don't live with them.
Yeah, we don't know if people are slobs. Just
I
in
had a
general.
landlord ask me to ask the previous landlord if they ever went into the home while they lived there to see how they took care of it. I'm like, I'm not asking that.
That's a weird.
The
That's a weird
question, I
question.
find that the best question when you are vetting somebody, and Meg, you may have some stuff to add to this too, but the best question I ask is, would you re-rent to them?
Yeah.
I always think there should be a website created for like landlords and tenants too, because there's some landlords that are really crappy, and
Real
that-
bad.
because there's no place that you can go to put in like their social security number and see like where did they get like bad reviews as a bad tenant before. Like,
Yeah,
I think-
I guess, yeah, Yelp reviews for tenants. But
I-
yeah,
I-
they need to have
but
them for
also Yelp
landlords
reviews
too,
for-
because we got some bad ones around here.
well, I mean, for landlords too, because like if
Mhm.
you're going into a property and the landlord's not fixing things, and like here, there's landlords sometimes that won't fix AC for weeks. And
Right,
it's 100, like it feels like 111 today, guys.
yeah, I've been into some properties that are just shameful. And I will let the landlord have it.
Right.
I'll say, you should be ashamed of yourself having the
Mm-hmm.
place on the market like that.
But can I redirect us back a little bit though?
Sure.
Yeah.
Some
Pet related.
suggestions for having your tenants get their pets accepted. I've talked about this before, and I learned about it because somebody submitted one to me, and I was like, this is the best idea ever. Military does this a lot. Have a pet resume. Literally create a resume with a photo of your pet, just the statistics, how old are they, like if you have them in doggy daycare, or if you crate train them, or whatever, and then have a testimonial from your previous landlord with that landlord's contact information so you can verify it.
That's a great idea, Jamie.
I know, that's awesome.
I
We
think
need to
current
put
and
together a
previous.
template for that.
a
Chris.
template, we can do a branded template for that.
Yeah, we need to do a template for that. So
I
people,
love that.
so everybody can
I would
use
put
it.
professional training on there too, because
Mhm.
if the
Yep.
dog's been to a professional trainer, that makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Meg, what were you gonna say?
I said, and have your previous landlord on there too, because sometimes
Mhm.
I have the issue sometimes when I go to a landlord and say, oh, I called their current landlord, they said XYZ. They go, oh, that's because they're trying to get rid of these people. So if you also have a review from your previous landlord, it sometimes helps to have multiple if you can.
Well, and
Or maybe even a
put-
reference from the vet or something. Yeah, just.
I would put shot dates, all of that kind of stuff on. And here's why. One of the things that would spark me as a landlord to be nervous is the people that need to get their vaccinations before they move in.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? The people are, because everybody I would imagine requires the pets to have vaccination. No,
We don't.
Never had a landlord ask that.
No,
that to me would be the very first
Yeah.
barrier,
no.
right?
I mean, No, we don't, on our thing, we don't even ask about vets. I would put that on the pet resume, but we don't ask for the vet information either.
I think on pet resume, you would put vaccination dates.
No,
and
that,
who their
I
vet
agree.
is,
Yeah,
you know,
because I think you're just showing that you take care of your pet. If
Yeah, I
nothing else,
think
you're
that just
showing that-
shows you're a responsible pet owner.
And if
Yeah.
you have your vet on there, like the vet sees a dog and like they'll remember if they have a crappy temperament and stuff like that.
I'm sorry. I am a bit shocked that vaccination things aren't the
I've
very
never
first
seen
thing
that.
that the landlord would care about, because
Nope.
isn't the worst thing that could happen? You have suddenly an outbreak of parvo and everybody's throwing up all over your units. Like, wouldn't that be the single most detrimental thing?
I've
These
never-
landlords don't even know what parvo is.
Yeah, I don't know that that
Yeah.
would be.
They have no clue.
No.
Now, there are condominiums that require stuff like that. They require licensing, they require regular vaccinations. A lot of times they don't get updates, but they require it upon acceptance of pets.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like Joe, where I live, I'm not required to register Jack's in town to show he has rabies certificate. Like, I'm not required to do that at all. Now in New Jersey, I was absolutely required to go register them with the town. It was like $15 for each dog, show their rabies certificate, if they were neutered or spayed like that. But when I moved here, there isn't a town that I've been in yet that's asked me to register this dog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
all the cities here, you are supposed to
Yeah, we're
register,
required here too.
but nobody does it. So I'm like, who polices that kind of thing? You
well, the
know?
one thing, guys, I can tell you is when you get a rabies tag, it registers the dog through so that's what most people don't realize. They really just change the way a lot of it works, in that when you get a rabies tag, that tag is tagged to that dog, and the vet offices actually have to turn those in
Yeah.
to say this tag goes to this animal. So that's kind of helping the registration. The reason this came up to me is I have a friend that owns one of the counties I work has a really bad shortage of housing for in the country. We don't have Section 8, we have what's called NECAC, which is like low income housing. And there's in one county we have 2,500 unused vouchers right now. So that means there's 2,500 people that have vouchers that can't find
Okay.
somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And one of my friends bought an old hotel and turned it into efficiency apartments. And one of the first things she came to us about, because they're low income, was how do we make sure that we don't have some sort of outbreak, we don't have an outbreak of puppies, because they realized a lot of people wouldn't take a house without their animals. So they were living in tents rather than give up their dog, which I have very much respect for that. I get that. But not only did they not want an outbreak of puppies, but you don't want an outbreak of parvo or distemper running through when everybody's in a fairly confined space, right? So we go by, No Time to Spare, I think, goes by every 6 weeks. And anybody new gets vaccinated. If they don't have them, if they don't have records, everybody new gets vaccinated. I feel like every landlord should be asking that, though.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you could weed out a lot of bad pet owners that you don't want because if they go, oh, let me see. Oh, I don't know where they go to the vet. Come on.
Or there's a lot of people here who do not believe in spaying or neutering their dogs.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
against their religious beliefs or their cultural beliefs or whatever. Or they're just stubborn and don't want to. So it's like, how do you force somebody to do that? Well, I guess you don't have to force them, but then you don't have to accept their application.
It's just laziness and people making money off the backyard breeder situation is so
Well,
bad.
There are some pretty substantiated reasons now that in certain cases people don't spay and neuter.
Yeah.
When you have working dogs, you don't spay and neuter until they're over a year old. And it's because the muscle mass just doesn't get the same without the testosterone.
Well, there's
Trust
a
me,
lot
I
of
go back and
parents
forth with
waiting
my.
for a year. I'm
You
not
know?
talking about a year. I'm talking about these people don't ever want to.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's a lot of theories, a lot of breeds that you should wait a year.
Yeah,
But I
I've been
don't
hearing
think
that
it's.
more and more lately, actually.
Mhm.
I think there's been something within the AVM that has come out recently as they've done studies. And what's interesting is it's actually a lot of the people pushing for it are the pity rescues, because you really notice it in the head of a pity. You can really notice that their jowls and their chest doesn't really develop all the way out. And so they end up being a little more squared in than squared out like this. Because I have a friend that runs a rescue here called Even Chance. That's 100% pity rescue. You guys would love them, because what they do is they take mostly former dog fighting dogs and they teach them to do various dog skills, like the rope climb and what's the thing where they jump into the water. They basically give them skills to learn that they can use those same body parts they would use in dog fighting to do something constructive. It's pretty neat.
And it works off their energy too.
Yeah, it's basically using that same prey drive that they have that's been bred into them for something that's a positive return. And they're really big about the not spaying or not neutering. They don't really, most of them don't care so much about spaying. They're a little more lenient there, but they're usually not using many of the female dogs for sport.
Right, but at least if the female dogs were spayed and the dogs aren't neutered, we're still cutting down on the overbreeding population.
Well, and I still believe that 99% of pet owners should have their dogs spayed as soon as they can. Right? I don't think it's I don't think we have an epidemic of undersized dogs. I don't think that's our problem in this country.
No. Yeah. But they're now doing some things linking early to cancer and things like that. So, but I don't think anything's 100% proven with that.
No, I think we still need to be looking at it. And this is one of the things with my dog trainer buddy that, he's big about waiting till a year, especially because they have mals and things like that they need the muscle definition. My argument to him is I fully believe in what you're saying. I just don't believe 90% of the population needs to know it. Most of the population needs to go ahead and spay their dogs so we don't end up with thousands of dogs that are all birthed by 8-month-old mothers. No,
Well, we just will not rent if you're, as I say, we won't even rent to you if your cat's, if you have a male cat who's not neutered.
That's good. And I actually think that's something we should add to our pet applications, or the pet lease part, is that they are required to be spayed, neutered, and or have their vaccinations.
Yeah.
I think spayed and neutered and vaccinations.
And appropriate licensing.
For dogs, I would put heartworm, not because I'm worried about it, but where that person's taking care of their animal.
Yeah, but that starts getting a little bit into the micromanaging. The vaccines, you can argue, you don't want the next door neighbor's dog to get parvo.
Yeah.
But you have heartworm vaccine now.
Yeah.
You have heartworm vaccine now. I don't know if anybody knows this, but this just came out like 2 years ago, but there's a heartworm vaccine now.
I did not know this.
Yeah, it's once a year. It's once a year. Yeah, my dogs do it because I'll forget to give them that little chewable thing.
I'm so bad. I'm always like 30 days, 40 days, 45 days, 60 days. You're good.
I don't know how bad it is for you guys, but in the Midwest, heartworm right now is really, really rampant. I would say, I bet at any given time, we have 4 or 5 dogs at the rescue going through treatment. And if anybody's not seen a dog go through heartworm treatment, it is basically very intensive chemo.
Yeah, and you have to keep them quiet and.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically doing the same thing chemo does. You're poisoning the heartworms out of the body by hoping you don't poison the dog.
And that's why they have to stay calm.
Yeah, or their hearts will explode.
We always seem to have one that's at the shelter that's been brought in from someplace else, but typically the Midwest, someplace else, that tests positive.
Yeah, and actually somebody told me Luke, my vet, because they were testing the kitten we have. He said this year they've had a big rash of feline leukemia too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we lost an entire litter to it that we were fostering.
Oh,
All
wow,
season.
you lost them? Because usually they still make it. They just have some
They
problems.
were all babies. They were kittens and all.
Oh, I'm sorry, Meg. That's horrible.
Thanks.
Horrible.
Yeah, that was rough. But yeah.
So
Wow. So I think, I think asking vaccination records, even if it's just I wonder if they know where they took their vet or where they took their dog to get vetted, I think is a huge piece to that.
Yeah, I don't know that I would ask for records, but I would ask for like the vet information and to verify, because our applications are written that, if they lie on any part of the application, we can cancel their lease at any time. So if we find out that they lied, it doesn't matter, So, I mean, at one point, people have to submit so much stuff to get approved for a rental property, at least around here, that I would hesitate to ask them for one more piece of information.
it's like everything
way.
besides your firstborn child and a blood sample. That's how it is getting through a guard gate around here with the HOA.
Yeah.
What's interesting though, if you fly with an animal, you have to have shot records.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Have
So I
to-
don't
you
know
just
that
have to show the most recent certificate. You don't have to have their records.
Yeah, you've got to show recent, the most recent vaccinations.
yeah.
So,
So I don't think it would be that like I don't think it would be that out of the ordinary.
No,
If you have to do it to travel, right?
Yeah.
right.
Well, we could ask for it as proof because before they move in, we require proof of renter's insurance. And, they have to switch over the utilities. I guess at that point you could say, now we need proof of these things, but I probably wouldn't put it as part of the application process because I just feel like that's one more piece of paper I don't need to be going through at the time.
Well, I think when you put it out there though, I think for me, if I'm looking at it from a landlord standpoint, the second you hand them that, what like the second they look at it, you're going to know whether they're telling it like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where my dog goes. Bullshit. Your dog doesn't go to the vet.
yeah, or they'll start backtracking. Well, we haven't had time to take them recently anywhere.
Now, I will say with cats, when you have indoor cats, my cats don't get vaccinated. My rabies shots are not up to date on my cats because they don't leave the house.
Yeah, mine either.
Yeah.
I
They don't go
used to
anywhere.
over-vaccinate a
get
cat that
rabies?
doesn't leave the house. But
I
I'm
do
not moving
I do
around.
get them, but it's like far and few. Yeah. Large
So
cat.
Jamie and Joe, I wanted to tell you, so with the heartworm thing, I actually had to make an alert in my phone every month on the same day. Is the only way I would remember to give him his heartworm pill, because otherwise I would be like you guys, like when did I give that to you last month? Because they give you little stickers, but I don't ever write on them.
Oh, I do. That's one thing I do. I write it on the box, but I do have it set up on my calendar. Still, yeah.
Still miss it. But yeah, I think I really like this pet application and let's put together a
Oh, a
kind of
template for the
baseline.
resume, pet resume.
Yeah, that people can use, and maybe that starts giving some landlords peace of mind a little bit.
Mhm.
Because I think more landlords would allow pets if there were more protections for landlords.
Right.
And secondly, if they knew more about the animal going in.
Mhm.
Like I would rent to a Saint Bernard before I'd rent to a Husky, even though Saint Bernard's a lot bigger dog, right? So I hate to say breed matters, but it does.
I mean, it does in a sense,
Yeah. It's personality, yeah.
Yeah, it's not to me, the breed, I don't consider breed as far as aggression goes because every dog is different. I consider breed as far as energy level.
Yeah,
That's-
high energy, low energy.
And needs. And their
And we-
needs.
And we do have, the problem is we can be as pro pet as we want. But when I have a landlord, I have a fiduciary responsibility to protect their interest in the rental property.
Correct.
I'm going to advise them best I can to do that.
Yeah.
Even if I want, it's the same thing with like, and I don't mean this to sound negative, but you have, to Christina's point, we get 10 applications for a property. We may get 10 qualified people, but we're going to go with the one with the highest income and the best credit score as opposed to the lowest income and the lowest credit score. I mean, we just are. So it's not that I think that lower income, lower credit score people are worse people. But when you only have certain factors to compare pieces of paper against, you're going to advise your client unless there's some extenuating information. You're
Well,
going to
do you
advise your
take
client to go with the best.
do you take the 500,000 cash offer or the 450 FHA? Right? I mean, it's the same.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
You're still picking the best, and I think that's something that a lot of renters don't get. Is it's not a choice of the renter anymore.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been for a while.
Well,
Right.
and I do tell my renters, you cannot, if you have a pet, if you have big pets, if you have multiple pets, it doesn't matter because it's a perception on the landlord side. We are not going to put you in the Taj Mahal of rental properties. We are not going after the most pristine rental property out there. You're going after the one that has a stain on a carpet. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that we're going to put you in a bad property. So I'm not saying we're taking you to a crappy, whatever. I'm just saying, comparing these two properties, they're not going to accept you in this one. You're going to have a better chance of getting accepted in this one.
Right.
With the, and that's in our area. That is just, and that's just an advisement, somebody who's got extensive landscaping and beautiful this, that, and the other thing versus somebody who has a fenced in yard that doesn't really have anything inside of it other than some grass and dirt patches. If you have dogs, the fenced in yard with the grass and dirt patches is probably a bit better than
Yep.
the one with the extensive landscaping and the swimming pool. Those people are probably not going to accept you.
And then
Well,
here, we don't have big lots here. Like most people have a pool on their property and we live on postage stamps. So there isn't a lot of yard behind the pool cage for them. They let their dogs hang, but then that's the other thing, the dogs swimming in the pool and the maintenance for the pool and the pool screens, because the dog will see something and run through the pool screen.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think there's a lot. I think the biggest thing we've learned is I think this pet resume thing would make a lot of landlords feel better. Right. But you're right. I think explaining to people that you're not always going to be you're not the cream of the crop renter necessarily.
Yeah, you
you
may
gotta
love
do
your
other things
fur
to get
babies, but that not everybody has to love your fur babies the way you love your fur babies.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't like most of my friends' kids. What are you talking about?
oh, please.
And make your application stand out. You can offer more money. You can offer a larger security deposit. Again, money talks. It's always going to help. And if
Mhm.
you can offer longer leases, larger security deposits, some other type of assurances to the landlord, that's going to put you to the top of the pile.
Okay, I'm going to ask one last question of each of you. As a landlord that doesn't normally accept pets for whatever reason, what's the one thing that would be the biggest, like, okay, maybe I am going to accept this animal? Would it be extra money? Would it be the pet resume? Would it be, if we find this insurance thing that Estella, like, what would be the single biggest one?
I think it would be a combination of the pet resume and more money.
Yeah.
Yep, money.
Longer lease, although my pushback on longer lease that I've heard from my landlords has been, well, if I don't like them after 1 year, I'm not going to like them after 2 years.
And here, Jamie, we typically only do 1-year leases. Like every year there's a new renewal.
We do up to 3-year leases because we have a lot of military that come to this area on 3-year assignments.
Right. Most people will come into town to try to figure out where they want to live. So they only want to rent for a year.
Gotcha.
But then for the same thing, the landlords are like, same mentality, like, what if they treat my property or they're really annoying or and I don't want to keep them. I want the option to not renew.
Yeah.
So I guess, the answer overall is money talks. So,
Really does.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Offer a bigger deposit.
Yeah, it's funny because I belong to Facebook group for people moving from like New York, New Jersey, and up there it doesn't matter how many dogs really that you have. I had 3 dogs on my property, but they have these great big dogs and they're like, oh, I'm moving to Florida and I've got like a pit bull, a German Shepherd, and a Rottweiler, and I'm like, okay,
good luck.
yeah. And they're like, what do you mean HOA? What do you mean restrictions? Because they don't have that up there.
I can only have 2 dogs in the city I live in. I can only have 2 pets. I have 4 cats and 3
We can
dogs.
only have
but
3 where I'm at. We can only have,
Again, like who polices has time to. police
Exactly.
that?
oh yeah, my HOA president has, I don't know, I think 2 or 3 cats and 3 dogs, and we're only allowed 3 pets total under my town.
I told them the one time one of my neighbors called, I just told them that I was watching my mom's dog. And that's not
Tell
really
your-
mine. I'm just
Tell
watching my
your
mom's
neighbor
dog.
to mind his business.
Like, okay, yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They have
I
a little
have-
dog that sticks its nose through my fence all the time, and then they get mad.
I have a neighbor
fence.
2 doors down who thinks like, I usually walk Jax at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And almost every other night, he's out there with his dogs off leash. And he has to quick grab them when I'm coming out the door. He's like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm like, enough of the sorry. Can you just put it on a leash?
Yeah,
For those people. I never have my dog on a leash unless we're leaving the property. But he also literally doesn't, you can walk by with a whole herd of dogs and he's like, there's a whole herd of dogs.
Yeah, but they have like one of their dogs is mean though. And they have 2 of them.
Oh.
So like he's
Oh,
out there by himself and one goes one direction, one goes the other, and he can't wrangle them up. And he looks in a full on panic when he sees me come out the door. And I'm like, just put them both on a leash. Like, I don't know how many times we have to have this conversation at 10:30 at night.
Oh, you poor neighborhood people living in your cities.
And Meg's
Mine
out
just
there
run
with
on the
all her-
acres.
I'm so jealous, Meg.
Mhm.
I used to have 3.5 acres when I lived in New Jersey.
well, does anybody else have anything to add? Because I didn't expect this to go on for an hour and a half, but this has been a really good
Yeah.
chat.
Well, I mean, I haven't
Oh.
seen you guys in a while and I'm sorry.
It feels like we've been a little apart from each other a little bit, but
Yeah.
Very busy.
I think this has been really good, and I am going to put together that pet resume. I'm just going to put together kind of a list of what we think is going to be on there.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of build it out into a template that we can share with
Let's create a
everybody.
form. Yeah, we can create a form out of it.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge benefit to anybody that's looking to rent. And then also even for the landlords to be able to say, here, take this, fill this out before. You know,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I have clients from Canada and he would never allow pets. And then his wife bought him a dog. That dog, again, stole the cultural thing, like the dog sleeps in their finished basement. I was about to say basement, but I didn't want it to sound bad. And now he's okay with pets because he loves this dog so much. I never thought I would see the day. He's been a client of mine since I started in 2010. And he'd always be like, no pets, no pets. I don't like dogs. And then his wife bought him a dog. That dog is on a pedestal, probably above the wife now.
My stepfather used to have a dog that he kept. This is a long time ago. So this is back when I was 16, which was a long time ago. He had a dog that he kept outside on a not in a heavy chain. She was well cared for. She had a great dog house. It was heated, but she lived outside. And when my mom and he moved in together, we had a Doberman Pinscher, and he made our indoor raised from a puppy spoiled Doberman Pinscher also live outside, which didn't bode well for me. Of course, I was at college, so I had no say so. I will tell you now that man dotes over their cat. Like, they don't have dogs anymore, they have cats. And that cat not only lives an indoor life, lives a very spoiled indoor life, is constantly on his lap. He gets 3 treats at a time, like 5 times a day. I mean, and I think sometimes it's how people were raised. Sometimes it's, I've learned over the years that people that grew up on farms don't necessarily always treat animals the same way that people who had lived in cities and had indoor animals their whole life. Or
in a lot of places, dogs they're a tool,
yeah,
right? Like, I mean, I have Ashley's cousin, they coon hunt. So they have dogs that live in the house, but the coon dogs you couldn't keep in the house.
Yeah.
The coon dogs would go through the plate glass window the second they saw an animal outside. So the coon dogs, that's what they do. They have their own pen. It's all heated and cooled and all that. They get out every day and then they hunt every weekend with them. But those dogs don't, you couldn't keep those dogs in the house. That's not what that's
Right.
not what they want.
Right.
So Jamie, I wanted to tell you, I'm looking at your dog because it keeps moving in the background, so cute. But your dog is almost the same color as mine, so I'm looking to make him a baked potato costume, like the top of the potato
That's awesome.
with that velcros around his belly, so that because everybody's like, your dog looks like a potato, and I'm like, that's what he's gonna be, potato for Halloween.
That's an awesome idea. I
Potato.
love that.
There's actually a YouTube video for making that costume.
He is a potato.
Mine is too.
Well,
You.
awesome, guys. Thank you all so much, because I think this has been a really good, valuable, valuable talk. And I think it's going to be one that we're going to be able to pull a lot of information out for everybody. And then as soon as I get that kind of template done, I'll make Chris sit down and make it look pretty with me. And then we'll get it out to everybody so they can see it.
Yeah, Jamie had the idea of the call. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
All
So
right, guys,
guys,
I'm gonna
thank you
head
so
out.
much. If anybody has any questions in the meantime, you know how to find me.
Yep.
And
one more thing before you say spay and neuter your pets. If you have not seen the 2 videos I did, I encourage you to watch them and copy them and use that same idea for yourself.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, we will. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
awesome,
Now-
guys. Have your pet spayed or neutered.
Bye.
All right,
Take
bye.
care.